Hello there. Thanks for checking back in with us. We had a bit of an issue with us both being under the weather this week, so instead of a fresh episode, we are bringing you a look back at a past episode that we think is worth resharing, Show versus Tell. Show versus Tell is an important reminder to reflect on your tools as a writer and ensure you're giving your story the best voice it can possibly have rather than throwing caution to the wind. Please enjoy this episode once again, and we'll be back next week with another fantastic guest.
We might be on introduction part 37. We don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes.
No, we can't do that. Bisexual lighting.
You're listening, and you have thoughts, and you want to share them with us. And we love that.
Oh, sure. Put me on the spot. Why don't you?
Susie sells seashells by the seashore.
No, she doesn't.
Because it's going to be great. I think you're going to enjoy the heck out of it. Welcome, everybody, to Write Out Loud, the podcast where we focus on writing, our love of the written word, bringing stories to life, because that's what it's about, right? Bringing stories to life, telling everybody your story, whatever that might be. That might be something different for you, for me, for my friend Christina here. So I'm Matt Kassem, and I'm joined today by, of course,
Christina.
Today, I think we've got something kind of fun for you. We're going to talk a little bit about a very interesting and delicate aspect of writing called show versus tell. Something that a lot of people strive for and a lot of people fail at, and that's okay. It's not easy, especially, depending on the medium that you're in. If you're in TV and movie, it's a little bit easier in some cases. If you're in the written word, it's a little more difficult sometimes. Sometimes you just want to grab the reader and tell them, I'm doing it because he likes her, okay?
Yes.
But you can't. You have to leave these subtle clues and bring them along and keep them hooked on your words.
Yes.
So that's what we're talking about today. Show versus tell. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, I think this is one of your favorite topics because you always bring it up.
It is.
You always bring it up anytime we're talking about writing of any sort. But that's good because it almost inevitably means the difference in a good writer and a not so good writer. I always like to share the way I think about show versus tell is, well, first let's explain what show is and what tell is.
Sure.
Tell is just telling something.
Yep.
The sky is gray.
Matt was mad.
Telling. Yes. It's not interesting. It's just information. I actually call it an information dump.
Mm-hmm.
You're just dumping information on us, but is it pertinent to the story? And even though show is maybe not necessarily pertinent to the story, it's interesting. It's the stuff that pulls us in. I like
makes
to
it
explain
relatable.
it. Yeah. And interesting and three-dimensional. And especially when you're reading versus watching a show, reading, nothing is three-dimensional until someone describes it. But it's not just description. Show is not just description. Show is giving us information through the scene. And that can be said for television movies as well. It is giving us information, additional information, than what is being shown to us on the screen. So some other things I want to say about show versus tell. There's actually this great
hold on one
quote.
Second. Let's pause there for 1 second, because I did want to think about what you just said, and I want to kind of build on that a little bit because I like what you said.
Yeah.
I think when you think about a show that you've watched or a book that you've read, and you think about this should illustrate it really well, right? You think about that moment where a character who maybe you've just met, maybe you haven't really gotten to feel out just yet, but they've interacted now with your main character that you've fallen in love with. You know them inside and out. You know how they react. You know how they are. And this other character says, why don't we go check it out? You can ride with me. And the main character is like, okay, sounds good. And as the main character walks off let's say the frame in this case, or even in the book, they walk off, a little look crosses the face of the person, this new character, and it's just sort of maybe a sly smirk.
Yes.
Right. So it's enough information right there to kind of go, uh-oh, they're up to something. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm interested because they're up to something, and I don't think it's good, but we're going to find out. Right. But we didn't have to say Johan was delighted that Matt walked off in front of him because now he was going to stab him or something. We didn't have to just throw it all out there.
Because if you give us all of the information, what is it again? It's an info dump. It's boring, but it's also an info dump. You're telling us all the information that we don't really need to know right now, and holding things a little closer to the chest, little mysterious.
It's like reading
is always better.
If you tell, it's like reading IKEA directions.
Yes.
Right. That's it. Like, yes. and I love them, but they're boring. I don't want to read them.
Yes. Always ask a writer to write the IKEA directions.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, it was actually last night, the Time 100 gala was on, and there was actually a moment where one of the people that was speaking read something and said that was written by an AI in the voice of, and I can't remember who it was. I think it was like Natasha Leone. And she said, and she's saying, does that sound anything like me? And then she goes on and she starts bringing up these things and names that are just obscure.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, now, if that were written by AI, we would have missed this, and this, because I decided to bring those things in, and she's right about creativity that way. But a lot of what you're talking about is definitely, again, I like to use the phrase, show is a scene unfolding.
Mm-hmm.
And by unfolding, it is over time, more directive towards something. So let me bring in one of the scenes from Heartstopper that really does distinguish what show versus tell means, and specifically for screen. Now, you can also do this in books because it would work there as well, but this is specific to the screen. So it's the scene where Charlie's going over to Nick's house for the first time, and he's asking Tori, he's playing with his hair, and he says to Tori, does it look too short? And she's like, it looks the same. And on she goes, it's the same. It looks the same. We get the point. Okay, hammer on the head. He goes over to Nick's house. Nick opens the door. Hi, and he's introducing him to the dog. And this whole time you're thinking this scene is about Charlie coming over to Nick's house for the first time, but it is not. It is solely about Nick noticing Charlie's haircut.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you got your haircut. Now, his sister, who sees him every single day, says it looks the same. But Nick, being interested in Charlie, has noticed the smallest, minute detail that looks the same to other people.
Mm-hmm.
But given that Nick is the one that has the crush in episode 2, called The Crush, that's showing us, rather than saying, Nick is interested in Charlie, it's showing us that he notices details, and you only notice details like that if you are interested in somebody.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh. It reminds me too of the scene where he gives him the picture of them in the snow. Right.
Yes.
Because there's so much in there that he's not saying out loud. They're not telling us about it, but it's that sheer that intimate moment of giving him that gift that's a memory of them in a very specific point in time. And it just says so much about their interests.
And Nick is looking at Charlie in the picture, directly looking. And you would only give a picture that you're looking at the person that you like.
Yep.
Like, not just like. You wouldn't give somebody that picture if you wanted to keep that a secret.
Exactly.
Nick wanted Charlie to know that this is more than just a, this was a great day. This was, he says, this was my favorite day ever. And here's the proof.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the proof, because I'm looking at you. It speaks so much more, like you were saying, than just the picture alone, because, the imagination takes you to those times where Charlie's going to look at that picture in his room, which in later scenes it is in his room, right beside his bed. But looking at that picture is going to remind Charlie, someone likes me.
Yeah.
Someone is interested in me. I gave someone their most favorite day ever. So yeah, that scene shows volumes, absolute volumes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's also different because I don't think Nick truly realized it at that point. Like, it was almost like his subconscious did it.
Yeah.
And it was his way of saying, like, I care about, like, he didn't really connect the dots yet, right? That was an intentional thing to be like, hey, dummy, I like you. Like, it was just, I wanted to give him this gift. This is what I was doing.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
And again, that illustrates my point, specifically with television movies, the visual storytelling, that show scenes are more about the unspoken things you're trying to convey than the spoken things that you're trying to convey.
Mm-hmm.
So spoken things in that scene were, oh, this was my favorite day. And, but the unspoken things are, look at the picture that he gave him. He was very, purposeful in that choice. He wanted to convey an emotion to Charlie, even if it was all subconscious.
Yep. Even if he didn't know.
But it's conscious stuff for the audience.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Well,
great example.
Kind of talk too about what you had said about the very first, couple minutes of the first episode.
Yes. When I work with writers, and it generally falls to first-time writers, they don't know how to start a story. Everybody talks about, I had to rewrite that beginning 20 times before I could get it right. And I usually start by telling them, start where the story starts. So what's the heart of the story that you're trying to tell? Start there. Find a way to start there. And it was so interesting because when I was rewatching the shows for this specific podcast, I noticed that in the first 2 minutes, I had to look down at the ticker on the screen, because so Charlie, he's all happy, he's walking in the halls, he's going to meet Ben, but Ben doesn't show up, and then he has to go to his homeroom, and he's got this new homeroom, and you can tell he's like, and he gets there and he meets Nick, and that's at the 2-minute mark. So 2 minutes into the entire series, that's, 4 hours long, 5 hours long, depending. I don't know. I didn't count. Anyway, 2 minutes in, we are seeing what the heart of the story is, Nick and Charlie. And I found it to be very, very interesting too. And I think again, on purpose, that Alice wrote it this way, that we didn't meet Ben before we met Nick.
Mm-hmm.
So the two most important characters are the characters we meet right away. We don't even meet, Tao and Isaac and, anybody else until after he meets Nick. So It's like right away, we are jumping into it and we're in the action, we're in the story. And both with television, movies, novels, every single storytelling medium, the first thing you want to do is catch your audience.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing catches your audience better than jumping right into the heart of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. Get them, hook their attention, right? Make them want to know what happens next.
Yes.
Because if they relate to it, and that's why show versus tell is so powerful, because show allows you to relate to it as the audience or the participant, right? Yeah. It allows you to relate to it so you understand it, versus somebody just telling you, oh, this happens and then this happens. You're like, okay, that's great. I don't really care.
Yeah. The funny thing is, that reminds me of like human beings. When we have conversations with one another and someone's telling a story, and they're going on, and they're bringing in all this information. You get so bored with the story that they're telling that you wander off.
Yep.
That's why there are, even in speaking, I think of TED Talks and things like that. The really interesting TED Talks are the ones that suck you in with the way they tell it to you.
Mm-hmm.
They're not info dumping. A TED Talk could be all info dumping. But the best ones, the ones that have gone most viral, Brene Brown, oh my God, is she a storyteller?
Yes,
she is absolutely a storyteller.
Yep.
So yeah, that's what you want to be in any medium that you write in, is that born storyteller voice. And that really means way more show than tell. Obviously, you can't do all show. You definitely don't want to do all tell. That's kissing.
Yeah.
But even all show is not going to work. You do want to balance some things out. Someone once said, show emotions, tell feelings. But I'm not even sure that that's you have to do it that way. You just have to be aware of when you're giving the info dump.
Yep.
And it's actually in the publishing industry specifically, there are so many more first person point of view told stories that's actually where you have to watch it the most, because you can get so far into a character's head that you are giving them the info dump. And we hate being there. And we skip those paragraphs.
Yep.
And actually look for where there's dialogue to actually get out of their head. So yeah, so you can actually fall more into this trap when it is first person, because that first person point of view tends to be more in the head, and more in the head you are, the more info dump you're giving us, and we don't want it.
No IKEA catalogs, no IKEA instructions.
Yep, exactly.
No. We're never going to be sponsored by IKEA, by the way. I'm just saying now.
Do you know I've only been into IKEA once in my entire life?
Oh my gosh.
And that was enough. That was enough.
It was so good though. I do love them.
No, I do. I'm not opposed to IKEA itself and putting together IKEA furniture or buying anything from IKEA. It's actually the shopping part.
But see, like tell, IKEA serves a purpose.
Yes.
Right. So there's certain times, like it's that exposition, like when you have to explain to somebody why something is happening that you can't show them for whatever reason.
Yes. Like the meme of the Scrabble game novel by IKEA.
Nice. Yes.
Yes. Let's see. There was one other I really wanted to talk about. In the second episode again, the second episode was so full of all these show things because we're getting to know them. So Alice is showing us all about them, but it's specifically in my mind. So if I didn't mention this before, I should definitely mention it now. When I came to Heartstopper, I had never heard of Alice. I had never heard of the books. Didn't even know that it was based on a book series until, afterwards. And I'm like, wow. So I went into it totally blind, unknowing, other than this was, a love story of sorts. And when the second episode is called The Crush, and yes, I believed they were talking about Charlie's crush, because here's the thing. Early on in the episode when, or was it was the first episode, Tao, Isaac, and Charlie are walking, and Charlie's going to rugby practice, and they're like, this is a silly crush, and he's like, it's not a crush. So in your mind going into episode 2, you're thinking, okay, this is more about Charlie's crush,
right?
But it wasn't until Nick comes over to Charlie's house, and first there's the drum scene where there's kind of a little hint of a was that something? But it's really when they're on the couch, Charlie's asleep, and Nick starts to do the hand, and it's not show, because of the sparks that were added because of the comics. It's not because of that, but it is absolutely the acting, the facial expressions, the hand, the whole way the scene unfolds.
Right.
With Nick like really wanting to grab Charlie's hand.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it finally occurred to me, oh my God, the crush isn't Charlie. It is that Nick reciprocates the crush.
Yep.
And then with the scene right afterwards with the hug and everything, and he walks out the door and Charlie's standing there stunned, and Tori walks in. I don't think he's straight. That, my friends, was all show up until Tori says, I don't think he's straight.
Yep. Yeah, it absolutely,
one of my favorites.
Absolutely was a masterpiece in that. And I think it is interesting because I think it is about the dual crush. Right.
Yes.
So that's what I love about the title, is it is just simply crush. It doesn't say a crush, the crush, all the crushes.
Yeah.
It's just crush. And the fact that they both have a crush and it's starting to develop. And that's the most I've said crush in a single minute, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I do. I love that. And again, I love the feeling that you get because we've all been there. You've all been there when you're that close to somebody that you like and you're like, should I, shouldn't I? Oh my gosh, I really want to, should I hold their hand? Should I, that's like, why you poke them or you pull their hair, because it's easier to be like, haha, I just touched you, but it was just a quick thing. And I was, whatever.
And he's so new to this feeling that like, he's like, what do I do? What do I like? How do I get this started? How do I let him know that, I like him?
What also occurred to me too about him in that moment is he never had any, in those moments, he never had any angst about it.
Yeah.
And I mean, because there's so much of that where you could feel sometimes throughout the series as he was struggling a little bit with his identity, that there was a little bit of angst that would creep in here and there because he wasn't really sure what to do in certain instances, where he might be discovered or he might be seen or he might be noticed or something like that. But
yeah,
I think in those moments though, where he was very much like, should I, shouldn't I really want to hold his hand? Oh my gosh. There was no angst to it. It was just I really like this desire.
Yes. And I think you touched on something there too. That's actually a theme through the whole show, is that when Nick is with Charlie, there isn't any angst. Even when after the kiss, the day after, when he shows up at Charlie's house, it isn't to say, okay, the kiss was a mistake and, everything. It was to apologize for running off after the kiss. Because it was like, okay, I just didn't know what to do afterwards. And he never has trouble, like when Charlie is spewing all of his, oh my God, it's my fault. I shouldn't have done that. Nick is like, whoa. No, I liked it, but I've still got to figure out what's, going on inside. Yeah. But he is never, ever anxious, anxiety, fearful, nope. All of those words that you normally associate with figuring out your sexuality. He has none of that when he's in Charlie's presence. So, and I think that's really telling as well, or showing the fact that Alice has written it that way, again, on purpose, is that she's showing that when you meet someone and it's not your usual type, that it just feels like home.
Yep.
I think Nick feels that Charlie is home. He has never felt, and in fact, it's actually his mother who says it, that, you're different around Charlie. You're more yourself.
Yep.
So
he lets his walls down for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why it's easier for him to be given the time to figure out, am I gay? Am I bisexual? What am I? And I think that's why he's able to quickly come to conclusions too, is that there's no pressure. There's no, nothing coming from Charlie other than comfort.
Yeah. I do love that Alice decided to do that in her writing of the entire series. Like, there's not that, because it's such a trope, right? That you could be like, oh my gosh, the straight boy who's now all of a sudden finds himself attracted to somebody, and now is going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't do this, I have to run away. Like, because it's such a stereotypical thing. It's such, like I said, it's a trope.
Yeah.
So it would have been very easy to lapse into that. And the fact that she doesn't go there and makes it very much that innocent kind of,
let's actually talk about that for a second. Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second, because expectations.
Mm-hmm.
That was another thing that in the third episode, The Kiss, right after Nick is done talking to Tara, he starts looking for Charlie. Charlie is running into Ben at that moment. And the whole time I was thinking, oh yes, Nick is going to swoop into the rescue and save him from Ben. And he doesn't. And then they, find each other again. And then Charlie says, I ran into Ben, but I helped him. I helped myself. I saved myself. And I was like, man, every time I'm thinking one thing or another, Alice writes it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And that just, it blows the expectations.
It goes back to what you always say around, there's always a third choice.
There is always a third choice. And the third choice, even though it seems easy and simplified, it's really not. It's the more complex choice these days, because why else would I think that Nick is going to swoop in and save Charlie from Ben?
Right.
Is because we're used to someone swooping in and saving the day. Whereas the anomaly is someone saving themselves.
Yep.
Which in real life, we generally have to save ourselves. We have to pull ourselves out of whatever it is that we're, wallowing in. So,
that's also a trope though too that she avoided by doing that, because the trope there is, again, the big tough jock straight boy is going to have to come in and sort things out, because the more effeminate homosexual can't handle himself or can't take care of himself. And it's a thing that writers and filmmakers go back to all the time. So don't do that. Don't do it.
No. Surprise your audience.
Yes.
Every time you surprise your audience, that's maybe keeping a secret, a twist. Colleen Hoover is one of my favorite authors, and I've been reading her for years, and I'm so happy that she's made this, resurgence, and like all of her titles were on the bestseller list at the same time or something. But she always had this twist. There's always a secret, the unexpected always happens. And even when you're expecting it, like when I pick up one of her books, I'm expecting some sort of twist, but it's never where you think it is. And she always dreams up another way of doing it.
Yep.
But you're absolutely right. You can't go wrong as a writer if you surprise your audience. If you take a trope and turn it on its head, take the gay romance and make it not about coming out, make it not about there's a stronger one and a weaker one. There's and I'm using air quotes here, there's a boy and there's a girl.
Right.
Because that was, I don't think they do that as much as they did back in our day, that there's always a boy and a girl in the relationship, even though there's two guys. Well, one is more, as you say, effeminate. But that's not the case.
No.
That's not the case. That's a trope. That's
just being lazy.
It is. Thank you for saying that.
It's just being lazy. Come up with characters that will surprise the audience. Come up with characters that have multiple dimensions. So someone who is perhaps effeminate, which is fine. We're not saying you can't have effeminate characters. We're not saying you can't have effeminate gay characters. What we're saying is, don't make them fall into the same tropes of they're only good at fashion and they're only it's like your typical stereotypical gay.
Like
make them completely different make
Yeah.
it somebody who's a finance wizard or something. I don't know. Like
Yeah.
you have so many different options available to you in this grab bag of things that you could make your characters, come to life
Yes.
from.
There is a spectrum.
Just use it.
There's a spectrum. There are all kinds of people. There's all sorts of gray. I do love a redemptive villain. Not saying that Ben in this case or Harry in this case need to be redeemed. But it's always interesting when you think you have someone painted one way and that character surprises you and makes you rethink everything.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think coming up soon we're going to have to talk a little bit about just that. The idea of I've lost the thought.
Villains?
No, the kind of the redemptive side of things. Crap. What was I going to say? This will all be edited out. It's fine. I'm going to work through it. Oh, Jesus. I just had a really good thought about it too.
Well, I was saying morally gray characters where,
yeah,
you're really, there's some bad people who are really good at the core.
Yeah.
But there's also some bad people who want to be good.
Yeah.
And I find them interesting.
Yeah.
The redemptive arc of the villain of everybody has to redeem themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that.
Yeah. No, me neither. I think it's also lazy. Again, it's just going back to tropes.
Yeah, I do.
But I think make your characters as multidimensional as possible. Think of them as a puppet that has not strings just to their hands and their feet and their
they're
head.
Not there. They're not there just for the plot.
They should have strings attached to every part of them.
Like Stephen King says, don't forget that the villain thinks that they are the hero of their story.
Mm-hmm.
So 100%, you got to write it that way.
Yep, 100%. Well, very good.
Yes.
Well, let's leave it there, and we'll pick it up again. And next time, we'll find my thought.
We'll find your thought. It's in the next episode. Your thought is in the next episode.
I'm just ahead of my time.
We'll find it there.
I'm ahead of my time. I'm time traveling right now. So very good. All right. Well, thank you, my darling. And tell them, where can they find more of Christina?
I can be found at bookmatchmaker.com, Christina at bookmatchmaker.com if you want to email me, or if you want to find me on social media, you can look up either Book Matchmaker. I'm on Instagram, quite active on Instagram, at Book Matchmaker there, or on Facebook, but I'm not there too often. So
mostly Instagram.
You might message me, and I might find the message in a couple of weeks.
Oh, you're generous.
Yes.
It'll be years before I touch it. It'll be years.
And where can we find you, dear Matt?
Best place to look is Cassem, CASSEM at omg.lol, where you'll find links and everything else you could possibly imagine. But you'll always find us. We're always around somewhere.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, until next time, my dear, I will see you soon. And everybody just keep writing complex characters. No tropes. Got it? No tropes.
And lots of showing, not telling.
Exactly. All the showing. Some of the telling occasionally, but mostly showing. 75-25.
80-20.
80-20. Perfect.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to the podcast. We really hope that you're enjoying every bit of it, but we would love to hear your feedback. Drop us an email either to matt@writeoutloudpod.com or Christina@bookmatchmaker.com. We would love to hear your thoughts. What's working, what's not working, and what do you want to hear more of? Thanks so much. We really appreciate it.